And hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Path to Study Abroad Our Way for Undocumented Students workshop. This is a workshop that's part of the larger Exploring Your Identity Abroad series. So this is a collaboration among the various UCs and UC campuses and the UC Education Abroad program, where we've been developing workshops that are surrounding exploring students' identities in the context of study abroad. And there'll be different sessions throughout the year led by different campuses. So welcome everyone who's coming here who are UC Davis students and then other campuses as well. We're happy to have you here today. With that, we will start to introduce ourselves. My name is Glennis Kincaid. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as the program coordinator and advisor at the Global Learning Hub at UC Davis. And I'll hand it off to Adriana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana Quintana Lopez, and I am a fifth-year PhD student in the School of Education. I also serve as the Graduate Student Advocacy and Resource Coordinator for the AB 540 and Undocumented Student Center here at UC Davis. And I'll hand it off to Chris.
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. My name is Christopher Relos, and I am an immigration staff attorney serving UC Davis from our organization, the UC Immigrant Legal Services Center. We are a source of legal immigration-based support for UC students. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Jenny.
Hey, I'm Jenny Moylan. I'm an advisor here at Health Professions Advising.
We're going to jump into the agenda and as well as our objectives for today's session. So we're starting off with the student panel portion, and we'll do a self-reflection exercise as well as a breakout groups portion. Then you'll get into some information about the legal requirements and support resources available, different global learning, study abroad, away opportunities. Part two of the student panel, another quick self-reflection exercise, and then at the end, we're gonna have time for Q&A for folks. So our objectives today are that you have the opportunity to reflect on your strengths and interests, identify different considerations for your global learning opportunities, and identify your support network. Hear from your peers, get some support that way, as well as have resources that are shared so that you can start this process of global learning. Okay, off to our first part with our panelists.
All right, everyone. So today we will begin with our student panelists. So whoever would like to go first from our two panelists, and just want to acknowledge that we want to thank you for being here today and taking the time to share your experiences with the diverse group of students that we have here today.
Okay, yeah, I could go first. So my name's Sonia. I'm at UC Davis. This is my last quarter here at Davis, but I'm like a fifth year, so I just took an extra quarter. I'm doing computer science, and my study abroad program was the study abroad internship in Barcelona, Spain over the summer.
Hi everyone. My name is Marlene, and I go to UC Berkeley. I'm currently a senior, and my major is public health. And my study abroad program was in Paris, France, and I just took an intro language to French and a culture and society class abroad. Thank you.
All right, so for this first section, again, here are just the guiding questions that we asked our panelists if they could reflect on, and they will be sharing their experiences with you all.
Okay, so I can go first. So the first question is, what motivated you to study abroad or away? For me personally, it was just knowing that as like DACA students or undocumented or however you decide to identify, there's not that many opportunities to go somewhere outside of the country to travel. So that was my main guide because I wanted to travel, but I also did an internship because I wanted experience in my computer science field, which I did get abroad.
Or
I
are we doing one by one?
Yeah, let's do one by one.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. What motivated me to study abroad was that I really enjoy traveling. I went to a conference in Hawaii through Berkeley my first year, and that was the first time that I left the mainland. And then I learned about advanced parole through like my study abroad advisor. And that's when I thought that that was like the best opportunity for me to go to Europe, because that was something that I've always wanted to do. And yeah, I couldn't think of any other way that I could get to that point unless I did an abroad program, which I really did enjoy. And even though it wasn't related to public health, I still felt like I could integrate those things that I learned abroad into my major. And yeah, I think it really doesn't matter like what major you do. I think going abroad is like such a good opportunity for DACA students to, travel and get to know a different culture and language. So yeah, I did it mainly for fun, if I'm being honest.
So the second question is, how did you choose your program? And then what was it? So I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I chose my program for the internship experience because since I am computer science, putting like an internship on my resume would be really, really valuable. And then I chose Barcelona in Spain specifically because I already speak Spanish. And if I was going to be going to like a foreign country, I thought I'd take it one step at a time instead of going to like the deep end of it all.
Yeah, so I chose France because I kind of grew up seeing it and like hearing about it all the time. And a lot of my peers, they would always talk about like Paris, and then I would see it on TikTok everywhere, and it was kind of like romanticized. And yeah, that's kind of why I picked it, because I was originally doing a study abroad in London and Paris. It's like a multi-site program that the UCAP offers. And that's the one that I wanted to do first because I thought that I could go to 2 countries in one trip. But my advanced for application took a really long time to get back to me. So last minute, I ended up switching it to the only programs that Berkeley had, which is Portugal, Spain, and Paris. And yeah, I just decided to go to Paris because of those reasons. I just wanted to see the Eiffel Tower really bad.
And then for support networks that I tapped into along the way, there was a lot. Firstly, like my family. Secondly, I also had like the school groups, like the Global Hub here at UC Davis and the AB 540 Center. Those were really helpful. Also with the UC Immigrant Legal Services Center, they helped guide me into what kind of things I would need and how possible it would be. And then most importantly, I think it would be the Bay Area Institute for Immigration. That was where I had my lawyer to help file for me. And then also like this Facebook group, it was called Advanced Parole Through DACA. It was super helpful because it just told you every single document you needed and it gave you examples. So it made it really easy for me to get all my paperwork in order for when I gave it to my lawyer.
Yeah, so for me, some of the support networks that I had while I was going abroad was the East Bay Community Law Center at Berkeley. And I just got referred through them because there's like an undocumented student program center here at Cal. And from there, I got referred to them, and they were able to support me with they were really knowledgeable in terms of like the paperwork that I needed. And they were just like super supportive. I feel like I just gave them like the letters of acceptance from my study abroad, and they did everything. So yeah, they're pretty amazing in the whole process and preparing my paperwork.
And then what do I feel I gained from studying abroad or away? Well, firstly, it's just like as a DACA student, you never think you'll be able to leave the country, but it was just really freeing, and it gives you a new perspective to go to a different country. So I'd say those were the biggest things. And then also like just the internship experience, that also was something that I definitely needed.
Yeah, for me, I was like really fascinated with like different languages and like different ways of thinking, because I often felt like here in the US it's like work, school, and it's just like that's like the lifestyle that kind of like the Americans have, kind of the ideology. But when I went abroad, I kind of noticed like different things. Like for example, if I miss the 51B, I'm always like overwhelmed, and like I always associate like going to coffee shops as like being a place where I work and study. But I wanted to see how like small things like that were different abroad. And when I went to Paris, that's like definitely something that I noticed. People like genuinely sit there and enjoy their coffee and like look at people walking, or just like enjoy the moment rather than associating that with like a workspace. And yeah, just like little things like that. And I also feel like just being in a place where I had like, it was foreign and I could make it feel like home was something that I really enjoyed. And being able to like navigate like trains or just getting around, I think like that was like something super useful. I feel like I could go on of like so many things that I gained from it, but it was just one of the best experiences of my life. And I would really like highly recommend it for everyone, even if it doesn't matter like which country you go to. I think that living abroad, especially as a DACA student and as an undergrad, like I would highly recommend it because you gain so much from it. Like just my perspective, like being abroad and coming back to the US has like I see my values and I reevaluate how I see things in my daily life. And yeah, so it was great.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you both sharing. Okay, on to Jenny.
So now I want to invite you to just as participants in this info session, just take a chance to take note of your own starting place. We believe that all education starts from the lived experience of the learner and proceeds towards freedom. And so we hope that you'll take a moment to note what your starting place is, what's motivating you, what support networks you have to tap into, and what your main considerations or questions might be.
We just wanted to get a sense of, the discussion that you were all having in your smaller groups. If you would like, you can unmute yourself if you feel comfortable sharing out loud. If not, you can always put it in the chat. And we can go from there and try to have, a lively discussion. But I think I do want to highlight some similarities that I saw between the two panelists and what they shared. I think two of the biggest things that resonated between each of the panelists is really taking the time to take advantage of these opportunities. I think as even an undocumented student myself, who hasn't taken advantage of advanced parole, it is a scary thing, but I think hearing about these two students who took advantage of it and really benefited from it personally and academically, I think it's a very important thing to take into consideration when we're looking into different things to do, academically and personally. And another thing is really tapping into those support networks and those resources that are offered not only on campus, but also on social media. As Sonia was mentioning, those Facebook groups can be very helpful. And then, of course, you're experiencing new cultures, new perspectives, and how that can really change your own perspective of how you navigate life once you come back to the States. So I think those were some of the similarities that I saw between both of the panelists, and really wanted to highlight that for everyone. And now open the space up to you all if you wanted to share some of the the common themes that you were talking about in your groups.
And I got a great question as folks are thinking. Someone asked if this is only a session for DACA students, and I should have said at the beginning that please stick around if you don't have that status. This is really, we are talking a lot about advanced parole and other parts that come with DACA status, but we do have a section that's talking about global learning for all students. So we'd love for you to stay.
Very much, Glynis. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris, and I am the immigration staff attorney serving UC Davis. I'd like to give everyone a quick introduction to the legal requirements to be able to study abroad if you are an undocumented student. Next slide, please. As we are learning today and seeing from our peers' experiences, there's so many different factors to consider when deciding to study abroad. There are personal goals, educational goals. There's also the practical and financial side of studying abroad. But at least equally important is meeting the legal requirements to be able to be allowed to travel abroad and come back to the US. Next slide, please. Now, the reason why it's important to understand and to meet the legal requirements is because your immigration status affects whether you would be able to travel abroad or not. There are some immigration statuses or some visa categories that allow a student to be able to travel abroad and return freely in general. For example, US citizens or green card holders or some students who have some other visa types are able to travel abroad and return to the US. Unfortunately, in general, for others, if you are an undocumented student or if you are a DACA recipient, there are more requirements to fulfill to be able to have the ability to consider traveling abroad and studying abroad. You would need to apply for special advance permission. And without that, unfortunately, study abroad would not be an option. Next slide, please. Now, let's talk a little bit about what these requirements are for students who are undocumented. There are two requirements that are always needed to be able to travel and study abroad. And then there is another requirement that is sometimes needed. For an undocumented student to be able to travel and study abroad, you will always need a combination of both DACA and advanced parole. Sometimes you would also need a student visa for the destination country where you are considering studying abroad. The best resource for information, advice, and assistance for DACA and advanced parole is a legal organization or an attorney or a law firm that provides immigration-related legal services, such as, for example, my organization, the UC Immigrant Legal Services Center. And the best resource for information and guidance for visas for the destination country or countries is your campus's study abroad office. For example, here in UC Davis, we have our Global Learning Hub, and they are able to provide guidance with visas for study abroad programs. Next slide, please. A little bit of background about the concepts of DACA and advanced parole. These are the requirements under US immigration law for an undocumented student to be able to study abroad. As many of you may be familiar, DACA is unfortunately not officially a visa category or a legal status. Rather, it's something we can think of as special permission to live, study, and work in the US for applicants who have lived here since childhood. Advanced parole is special permission for individuals, including DACA recipients, to travel abroad despite not having officially a US visa or a green card or other immigration status that permits you to travel. Advanced parole is necessary even if you already have DACA. To be able to travel abroad, you would need to have advanced parole first. And it's a separate application from your DACA or your DACA renewal. And you have to request it, you have to apply for it in advance of your planned trip for your study abroad program. And it's very important to also budget enough time and apply for it well in advance, because it tends to take several months for the immigration department, called the USCIS, to receive, process, and decide on advanced parole applications. Currently, the estimate is about 5 to 7 months, although the actual length in each application will be individual on a case-by-case basis. For DACA recipients, advanced parole also needs to be for certain purposes for the trip. There are 3 main purposes that DACA holders can request advanced parole for. They are educational, humanitarian, or employment-related trips. A study abroad program would qualify under the category of educational trips. Next slide, please. I'd just like to emphasize the importance also of being careful when, number one, deciding to apply for advanced parole. And then the second is making the decision to travel abroad altogether and attend the study abroad program. And the reason for this is that every person's case is unique. Every person's history and situation is unique. So the analysis of whether it is safe to travel abroad, even if you are approved for advanced parole, is very important to make sure that you're able to identify whether there might be any difficulties or complications with coming back, with being able to return to the US and be allowed by immigration officers at the airport to come back in the US. So for anyone who is undocumented or a DACA recipient, or even any person who is not a US citizen, it's very important to have that individual analysis before deciding to travel abroad. And the best way to do that is by having a legal consultation with an immigration attorney. That is something that UC students have resources for. Our organization is a team of attorneys and legal staff that's dedicated to providing free legal consultations, information, and assistance to UC students and their immediate family members, such as a spouse, parents, children, and siblings. Our organization serves 9 out of the 10 UC campuses. Next slide, please. On this page, you can see a link to our website. Each campus has an attorney providing legal consultations for the students and community of that campus. And UC Berkeley students actually have a dedicated organization providing the same services for the Berkeley community. Next slide, please. And the ways that our organization provides legal support to the student community is by providing legal consultations by appointment. Sometimes we're able to provide direct case assistance, helping with applications. We're able to provide referrals to other trusted legal organizations or practitioners in each campus's area. And we also give workshops and community presentations, both in person in each respective campus, and also sometimes online through webinars like this. Next slide, please. So here in Davis, we actually have an example of an upcoming in-person workshop. We will be having a workshop for advanced parole specifically on Wednesday, November the 9th from 5 to 8 p.m. The location will be determined later, and it's hosted by the Global Learning Hub. And here we'll be showing what the requirements are and step-by-step how to prepare an advanced parole application. For students from other UC campuses, please feel free to contact or go to our website, the website of the UCIMM organization. And from there, you can find a link to the appointment booking page of your campus attorney. And you can schedule a legal consultation appointment by Zoom. Next slide, please.
Okay, so I'm going to go through a little bit about, give you a taste of global learning opportunities, but then I want to really reserve the last little chunk for our panelists so you can hear from them again. So this is recorded. Please come back and look at the slides more in depth later. We wanted to just really highlight why global learning is important, your ability to increase your global awareness. It's as it connects to your identity and connecting with community. It allows you to address global challenges and build and cultivate your intercultural skills, which I know a lot of folks are currently doing, have done. There's lots of benefits to global learning. Some of them, as you can see on the screen, the one I love to call out is for students that maybe have the perception that it will set you back to engage in a global learning opportunity. We actually have information and data that shows that actually helps you get ahead or at least reliably graduate on time. And it has a lot to do with the support network that you encounter when you go through this process. Some of the key different program options that I won't go into too much depth of are that there's study abroad, traditional study abroad, where you're going outside of the US to a location. There's internship opportunities, there's research opportunities, virtual opportunities, campus opportunities, and then of course, opportunities around the US, not just in California. So lots of different types of programs. Please reach out to your study abroad office to go in more in depth about what is available on your campus. But please know that it's not just study abroad, but there's really lots of different options. A little bit for the planning part. So wanting to call out that it's recommended to start the planning process early. There's lots of different competing deadlines, lots of applications that you have to fill out. These are things that you would need to plan in advance for and kind of sketch out a timeline for yourself, thinking about what materials you need, that advanced parole if you are studying abroad, having a visa, making sure you have a passport or using an ID if you're traveling in the US, things like that. And a big piece of this too is funding. A lot of students, that is their main concern and what they're thinking about. So know that it could be more or less expensive than you studying on campus, and often financial aid is available with possible exceptions depending on the student. So we always advise that you talk to a financial aid advisor and have that representative support you through that process, talking about what's available, using the resource of your study abroad office to talk about scholarships and awards, and of course planning for any out-of-pocket expenses that might happen in advance, like getting your passport updated or the first time getting a passport or getting a visa. And then to really showcase the various campus resources that are available, we've talked about most of them. So utilizing your home campus Undocumented Student Center, what Chris mentioned with the UC Immigrant Legal Services Center and the East Bay Community Legal Center. I hope I said that correctly. And utilizing your study abroad office, financial aid office, your academic advisors, all those are key pieces and part of your support network. And so what's next as you're thinking about what global learning, study abroad, study away opportunity am I doing, to really explore what your interests are and define whatever expectations you have for the program. There's lots of search tools. We have them on our website. They exist on others' websites about what are your program options in general, what is your funding options. Those search tools exist. People use social media to explore different things that helps them visually see what is out there and connect with other students, discuss with your loved ones, come up with a plan, seek their advice, sketch out that timeline, consult with those resources, and plan ahead. Okay, back to our student panel for the last.
I can go first, yeah. So my experience navigating the advanced parole, I think at first it was pretty well, I guess like the UCIMM Community Law Center, like they made it pretty easy because they gave me a list of the things that I needed, like for example, a letter of acceptance from the program that I got admitted to. And then after that, the advisor from the study abroad, they also wrote me like a letter of why this was beneficial for like my academic success. And basically those were the only two things that I submitted the first round that I submitted my advanced parole, including my passport, my DACA card, and also like the USCIS like letter saying that my DACA is approved for like the 2 years. So that's what I submitted. I think there's like something else that I submitted, but I can't think of it right now. And then it literally took, I submitted that in August and I didn't get like something back from USCIS until March. So that was like a really long time. And by then I had already like withdrawn from my study abroad because I was not hearing back from them in like 4 months. So I didn't want to pay the fees because it was like $500. So then after that, I did hear from Advanced Parole literally the day before my program started. And I kind of felt like really crushed because it was literally like the day after my study abroad was happening. But I actually spoke with my like legal assistant, like the advisor from the UCIMM Community Law Center. And I was like, no, like I still really want to study abroad. And so what we did is that I said if it was possible, if I could pick a new destination and do a different like study abroad in the summer. So that's why I did a study abroad for the summer session. And that's when she said to include more evidence. So I got a letter from my major advisor from public health, where they wrote me a letter of why it was like such a good opportunity. And then I also wrote a personal statement explaining like how this would help me with like my undergraduate and also like fulfilling the units to graduate. So then I submitted that, but then my program was going to be in like a month or two. And what I did is that I contacted like Senator Alex Padilla, asking if they could like please expedite my transfer application because my study abroad was approaching very soon. So I think that that's what really helped my advanced pro application, because I contacted the senator and I said, hey, like the deadline's coming up, like you guys are taking so long. And I feel like that's what made an impact for my advanced pro. I think if I did not do that, I don't think I would have gone abroad because they were just taking like way too long. And I spoke with someone else, like another like legal attorney from back home in LA, and they said that they didn't view it as an emergency. So that's why like they were taking so long, but it was like an emergency for me, of course. So yeah, and I think like what worked, how I mentioned, is just being able to have the documents for the first round, because I'm currently working on another study abroad program in summer 2023. So that's from June all the way to August. And I already started with the process like last month, and the advisors from UCAP were super helpful in terms of like opening up the application, because I think if you were to check like programs now, a lot of them aren't open yet, and they don't open until like November or December for like the summer. But I think like if you reach out to your advisor at your school, they're more than happy to like open that application for you, so you can apply and submit your application, because they know that the time is very delicate for advanced parole. So that's what now that I'm doing it again, what I'm doing is I'm getting the letter from my public health advisor, and I'm getting the letter from the office of the study abroad, and I'm also writing my personal statement. So all the documents, like the more evidence you have, the better. I feel like it's what worked for me, because the first time around, like they wanted more evidence, and that's why I couldn't go. But yeah, having all those documents prepared in advance will definitely help immigration know that you have all the evidence that's needed, and they don't need to question you for further information. And in terms of funding, so how I mentioned, I'm currently a senior right now, but I've always wanted to study abroad like my whole undergrad. So when I was a sophomore, that's when I started to look into it. And because of COVID, like they were delaying everything, but I had a lot of hope, and I really hoped that I could go abroad. So I worked like 2 jobs for my junior year, and also like my junior year, I worked 2 jobs, and I didn't have a lot of like free time, or I was just like working. But I think like that sacrifice is so worth it. Like once you go abroad and you have your money saved up, like you can really enjoy being out the country, because it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I think if you have to pick up like 1 or 2 extra shifts, like it's so worth it. Like being abroad is the best, because from what I did a little bit of research, and I saw that they do have a scholarship called the Billman or something like that. But because like DACA students don't qualify for that, so unfortunately we're not able to get that funding. But I think if you could look into extra scholarships or grants, I would really recommend that. But mostly I just did it out of like working on campus. Thank you.
Okay, and then for me, my experience navigating the AP process was probably easier because of like all the support support groups I tapped into, like specifically the Facebook group, Advanced Parole through DACA, that's what it's called. They had everything that I needed, so I knew immediately from the start what documents I needed, plus examples of those documents. So that helped me, that smoothed the process before I submitted the application. And then I submitted it in early February and I needed it by June. 2 months in, I asked USCIS for an expedition because there's a process to expedite it if you meet certain conditions. But I didn't, I got denied. But then the next month, which is 3 months in early May, I got it approved. So my timeline was only 3 months. So I don't know if I just got really lucky, but I want to say, I feel like having everything prepared did help me have it move faster. And then something what worked, it's like, again, just having a close contact here at the Global Center so that I could get all the forms I needed quickly, because they knew how the time was a factor in the application process. So having a contact here, and then also the Facebook group, again, just like having so many examples and cases that I could look at to help me, that was also super helpful. And then the main challenge, again, is just always the timeline. If you could find a program that you like that has a very early admissions, and then early admissions, so that you don't have to be on a time crunch, that would be the best. So that's how you should look into those also. But yeah, my outcome was that I was able to go. It was all well. Everything went great. Coming back in was also fine. It was just like a lot of waiting and then talking to somebody. Then they like stamped my form because I had to bring the form with me. And then I got back in, like not scary or anything. And then for funding, I just took out loans. I don't like working. I didn't want to work. I just took out loans and I have them, but I'm hoping with like the internship experience, I can just pay it off with the job that I get. I don't know. I'm hoping for the best, but yeah, no, I was lazy about that. And then I got it's all for me.
Thanks so much, you too.
All right, so we wanted to take this time to also have anyone share anything that they were hearing from our panelists, any themes that popped out to you. We will have a little Q&A session in a bit. So if you could, hold your questions or post them in the chat so that we have them for Chris or any of us to answer. I did also want to highlight some of the things that I was listening to from our panelists. And I think one of the biggest things, and Chris may also agree on, is to apply early for advanced parole and have all of your documents ready, all of your supporting letters of recommendation, be very organized. I think that was one of the biggest things that I was hearing between our panelists, specifically with Marlene, having to not apply to one program because of, immigration services not processing your paperwork soon enough. So they do take a longer time. So definitely get that application in sooner rather than later. And then I think it's also very important to, again, tap into your support networks, as mentioned from our panelists, and for funding and also for just additional support. Going through the process may not be easy, but there's people in your corner who are always willing to help you, and just taking advantage of those resources and support systems will definitely help ease the process a little bit more. And if there's anyone who would like to share, if not, then I'll pass it over to Glynis.
Yes. Oh, yes. I see a hand raised.
And I just
Hi, my colleague brought up a good point that we should share. If a student is planning to go abroad with UCEAP, we will work on processing that application as early as we can. Even this year, we were able to do it before applications for the following year opened. We can process that application early, get you that participation letter early so that you can get started on the advanced parole application as quickly as possible.
Thanks so much. Yes, that's a great point. I remember seeing that
Monica,
email
do
come
you
through.
want to put the contact information to request that service in the chat?
Sure, yeah, I can just put my email and then I can help the student get to whoever they need to go to.
So now I'd like to invite you just to make some notes again for yourself. We've talked about a lot of resources from family to Facebook groups, to advisors, to law centers. Who will you contact first? And what are your sources of support? And then just make a couple notes about what you want to talk about so that you set yourself up for success going forward from this workshop.
Hey, so re-highlighting that there's lots of different centers that can support you at your home campus.
Yes, we have a great question. The question is, how will advanced parole be affected with what's going on with DACA? And the way I'd like to approach this question is just by being extra careful and emphasizing that it's best that if you're a DACA holder and you'd like to study abroad, to have that individual confidential legal consultation with an attorney, both while you're planning to apply for DACA and especially before actually going on your trip abroad. And just as a summary of what's going on with DACA recently, it has been challenged in court over the past couple of years. And the federal court said that DACA renewals can still continue. So renewals still continue. Advanced parole will still be accepted for DACA holders. Advanced parole will continue, but the final decision on each application will be determined case by case. But there is a new version of DACA. It's called the federal regulation, and it's still going to be challenged in court. So as time progresses, we just don't know what will ultimately happen with DACA. So what's important is it would be good to stay up to date. Our website will have information as updates come. So please feel free to save a link to our website from the chat, the UC Immigrant Legal Services Center. And then just have that legal consultation as part of the process of deciding whether you would like to study abroad, and then also if you have an approved advanced parole, whether it's safe or whether it's still a good idea at that point to go on your trip. And that would be a very individual determination. So I encourage you to have that legal consultation with a trusted attorney.
I didn't mention, but any questions, both our panelists are here. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time. So if you do have specific questions for them, they're available right now. You also got their email addresses.
Can I share a quick tip?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so something I didn't get to mention earlier, but make sure that your DACA isn't being, or you don't need to renew your DACA throughout the process of the application or being abroad. So make sure that your DACA fully covers that entire period. So if you need to renew, make sure to maybe try to do that early if you're gonna apply and it's gonna expire sometime in that process. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you.
Is it okay, like, when I was going to like my abroad program, I was honestly like really terrified of like leaving the US and like coming back, I was honestly like having so much anxiety because when I did come back, one of the immigration, I stopped in Canada first and they asked me, oh, like, they were just like questioning me. Well, not like, they were just saying, oh, like, where's your green card? And like, obviously I don't have a green card. So that was like pretty scary, but it was all fine and it was pretty smooth. They didn't like ask me anything else besides that. I just showed them my advance parole letter and they held me back for like 15 minutes and I was like in this room with like an officer and I was pretty scared because you never know what could happen, but I came back with no problem. I would say that going to the airport and coming back from France, like that part was hard in my experience because when I was trying to check in my bags and get my boarding pass, like the workers couldn't figure out like what my letter was and they couldn't get me the boarding pass because when you go to the machine and you enter your flight like number and your confirmation, it's supposed to print out that boarding pass. But because I was scanning my Mexican passport, it required me to have like a proof of permanent residency. And because I didn't have that, I had to go to the front desk. And I was there for 3 hours. And yeah, they called like a bunch of people until they finally like let me through and gave me the boarding pass. So that was a hard part for me. But yeah, I was really scared. And I would recommend like talking to someone before you like depart because I was pretty nervous about that. But it ended up being okay on the way back.
Thank you for sharing that, Marlene. And then there's another very useful question. Are students able to travel to multiple countries while abroad? And that is also a very individualized case-by-case determination. In theory, you're able to request multiple countries in an advance parole request, but in the end, the decision whether USCIS will allow multiple countries will be dependent on each person's individual application. So having that legal consultation both in the advanced parole application phase and also when deciding whether you feel okay with actually going on that trip abroad is very, very important.
Go ahead.
And then I got some questions, like firstly, like about the process in getting back into the US in the airport. I arrived in Miami. I made sure there was a big layover from Miami back to San Francisco because I was scared that I wouldn't be able to catch my flight. But so yeah, I left around 3 hours. Sometimes it's way less, sometimes, I mean, I don't think it could be more than 3 hours, but yeah, that was my buffer period. I got in and then I went into a line for entering through immigration check. If you have a US passport, they take you to one side, which I didn't. So I went through a foreign passport. Then I showed them my DACA documents and my DACA card, and they took me to another room where there was other people who with visas and processing their stuff. I was waiting there for a while because they take your passport and they put it on a stack, and then they go through, they just call your name, and then they talk to you, they see your documents, they give you a stamp, and either they let you go through immediately after that, or they take you to another room where there's someone who does something like more complicated with your paperwork, because advanced parole is a little bit more complicated than just like a stamp or something. And then after they did that, I was able to cross through and then go to my next flight. And then I guess, okay, and then a follow to that one was, what do you recommend students do to avoid this delay? For delay in the immigration or in the immigration room, honestly, I don't think it's going to be possible to avoid it. So I would just plan for it. I'd say 3 hour layover is probably fine. And then, yeah. And then I also did get another question about funding, or that was for everybody. If anyone wants to tackle that one. I didn't get any I only got funding to cover my classes, but not the trip from the school.
Yes, so depending on, I think it has to do with the California Dream Act application, and then also whether or not students have AB 540 eligibility as well. Those two pieces make a difference as far as financial aid available. And it's just, we don't have a financial aid representative here, unfortunately. Let me see if I can tell what school this is for. Oh, I can't tell. So I would just recommend contacting your home campus about that and your financial aid department directly and see what options are available. I know that they work directly with students and can highlight what aid is actually available, but I believe there's funding sources depending on what application you filled out at what time by the deadline, things like that.
Oh, I see a question from Jacqueline about like she said, what do you recommend students to? Oh wait, never mind. I think Sonia answered it. But yeah, I did have like I emailed my paralegals before I sent them my itinerary, like I'm going back to the US at this time, and I kind of made sure to for the time difference so that when I would be in the US or in Canada, because that's where I had my layover, that their offices would be open. So if anything, I could just call them. And also important to note that if like advanced pro gives you a deadline, like let's say your abroad program, for me it was from June all the way to August, they only let me stay in like France until August 10th. So I made sure to come back a week before that so that I could have that week period in case anything went wrong.